Let's consider 4 scenarios for how the war in Iran could develop. Scenario 1. Rescue escalation effect. How it changes the war. A successful pilot evacuation, for example, by the US 161st Special Operations Aviation Regiment would not be an endpoint, but a trigger for a larger war. The rescue of the pilot is the worst thing that could happen for Iran in the short term. Trump, with a living witness and a hero for a White House photo op, would turn the operation from retaliation into liberation. The pilot at a press conference would talk about torture by Iranian guards, and Congress would applaud a ground invasion. But there is a catch. The rescued pilot becomes a symbol that leads the US into a trap. Urban fighting in Tehran would drag on for years, and the turning point would become a second Vietnam for America. The pilot survives, but the war will not end soon. Scenario 2. Captivity chess game. How it changes the war. Captivity freezes the conflict and shifts it into cold bargaining logic. The capture of the pilot is the only scenario where Iran gains not a tactical but a strategic victory. Tehran would not torture the pilot. Instead, he would be shown on television well-fed and unharmed. But in exchange for his release, the US must stop supporting Israel in Syria, unfreeze Iranian assets, and publicly apologize for violating airspace. In America, a split begins. Hawks demand a forceful rescue. Liberals call for negotiations. Trump hesitates between the two camps, losing time. Iran uses the pause to move missiles closer to its borders. Captivity does not stop the war. It preserves it, making the explosion even more dangerous in 6 months. Scenario 3. Death bloody harvest. How it changes the war. Death shifts the conflict from rational politics to emotional slaughter. The death scenario is the only one that turns limited conflict into total destruction. If the pilot dies during capture, for example, executed on camera, or blowing himself up with a grenade, rather than surrendering, a September 11 level reaction is triggered in the US. The demand for punishment means not invasion, but wiping Tehran off the map. B-52 bombers would drop, not smart bombs on airfields, but tactical nuclear weapons on Iranian nuclear sites. This would trigger a chain reaction. The death of one pilot starts the doomsday clock. But the paradox is that in this scenario, the war ends the fastest within 72 hours after the strike, when Tehran is reduced to a crater, and the world enters a new Cuban Missile Crisis era. Scenario 4. Hidden disappearance. No capture, no body. How it changes the war. The most dangerous outcome for propaganda is uncertainty. There is a 4th scenario. The pilot disappears without a trace. No body, no captivity video, no ejection. His F-15E is torn apart in the mountains, and surviving a 1200-degree fire is impossible. But the US refuses to admit it. Operation Phoenix is declared. A search for a living pilot turns into a kind of religion. Satellites scan the desert, special forces sweep caves, and in America, fake stories spread that he is hidden in the basement of the Ayatollah residence. This scenario is an endless war. No body means no end. Trump would bomb Iran until the end of his term, explaining it as hope for rescue. And 10 years later, some Bedouin might find a melted helmet in their Rimmel. But by then, the war would have consumed 3 generations. Disappearance is worse than death. It leaves a hook in the soul of a nation. The fate of one person truly changes the scale and shape of the conflict. But the key factor is not even the fact itself, captivity or death, but how that fact is presented to the American public. Iran only wins in the captivity scenario. The US only wins in the rescue scenario, but loses in the long run, and everyone loses in the disappearance scenario.